Kakashi Hatake is one of the most legendary shinobi in the history of Naruto. The copy ninja is obviously a huge fan favorite, consistently astounding audiences with his incredible feats and pure sense of morality. However, in recent years, I feel a massive disservice has been done to the iconic 6th Hokage, particularly in the power scaling community. Many people today seem to ignore a lot of his more impressive feats, or simply not understand the displays of power he puts forth, leading to what I believe is an inaccurate placement for him in the Naruto world's tiers of power. So today, we'll be setting out to correct that, going over his feats and statements form by form to establish where he should more reasonably scale. In other words, today we'll be exploring and breaking down why I believe Kakashi is underrated. Kicking us off, we'll begin by scaling Kid Kakashi. By Kid Kakashi, what I really mean is pre-ANBU, as he joined the ANBU at 12 years old. So, essentially, we'll be using all of the scaling he has from the day he popped out of the womb up until he joined the assassination unit. So, just how impressive is this version of Kakashi? For starters, he's the youngest Genin, Chunin, and Jonin of all time, graduating from the academy at 5, being promoted to Chunin at 6, and likely being promoted to Jonin at 9 or 10. We get this number of 9 to 10 based on the fact that he and Obito graduated the academy together, joined Team Minato together, and took the Chunin exams together, while Obito graduated at 9 and Kakashi graduated at 5. The only way these things work is if they're about 4 years apart, and Obito is stated to have been 13 during the events of Kanami Bridge. Since Kakashi is already a Jonin at this point, he must have been promoted to Jonin at no older than 10. Not only does he achieve these promotions at an exceptionally young age, he's also stated to have become one of the most forefront shinobi in Konoha at that time, making him one of the strongest shinobi in the village at just 9 or 10 years old. So, needless to say, Kid Kakashi is super impressive, but what about his actual feats? The best thing in this category that we get from this version of Kakashi is that he's able to one-tap Kako, a stone shinobi who's called in the databooks an extremely powerful Jonin. This feat automatically puts Kakashi at bare minimum in that mid to high Jonin tier. Keep in mind, this is a 9 to 10-year-old Kakashi who's fatigued, freshly injured, and only has a 2-tomo Sharingan. He then would go on to have another 2 to 3 years of combat experience and training, and develop his Sharingan further to the 3-tomo, which would obviously increase his combat prowess drastically. It's no wonder that Tsunade, who would have left the village when Kakashi was around 10 years old, was surprised that Part 1 Kakashi lost to Itachi and Kisame together, two famously powerful and dangerous S-class criminals. That's not to say that 10-year-old Kakashi should be above either of them, just that Kakashi's early achievements and potential are borderline unrivaled in the series, so Tsunade likely expected that Kakashi would have been a borderline unrivaled shinobi at that point in time, given how much time had passed. Unfortunately, Tsunade did not consider the depression nerf, but that being said, realistically, this version of Kakashi should not only be high Jonin level, but likely one of the strongest shinobi in Konoha, even at merely 12 years old. One final point on Kid Kakashi here is that if you want to highball him, you could argue that his Chidori is Lightspeed. This argument goes as follows. During the Kanami Bridge mission, when Kakashi first unveils his Chidori, the Viz translation has Kakashi say that he named it after Minato's alias. Not only do we know that isn't true since Minato's alias is Yellow Flash and not Chidori, the actual translation has Kakashi say that it's just like Minato's alias. This is an important distinction because the same databook that covers these events, Databook 2, has an entry covering Minato's alias, the Yellow Flash, which reads as follows, quote, Konoha's Yellow Flash, a blade with an absolutely inescapable, unavoidable light speed movement, an art and technique that shines brightly on the battlefield. The dazzling name is the former nickname of the 4th Hokage, end quote. So not only is Yellow Flash Minato's nickname, it also describes an unavoidable light speed strike that he has become famous for using. This is likely in reference to an FTG / combination attack, but regardless, it's just stated to be light speed. So you could argue that when Kakashi says that Chidori is just like Minato's alias, he's referring to this technique's speed. An easy counter to this would be pointing out that Kakashi could just be referencing that it's fast in general, or that it gives him the ability to take down numerous opponents swiftly. So I wouldn't use this in a debate or anything, but I bet you didn't expect to get a Lightspeed Kid Kakashi meta, now did you? Well, buckle in, because there is much, much more to come. Okay, so I have an entire video on ANBU Kakashi called How Strong is ANBU Kakashi, which I'll link in the description, so if you want to check that out for a more in-depth breakdown, feel free. That said, the quick version is ANBU Kakashi is stronger than the previous version, making him bare minimum high Jonin level, but then he spends at least 9 years in the ANBU, getting stronger due to going on missions and training consistently. We then have Kakashi being a captain over Mukaiko Hinata, with ANBU captainship being largely attributed to combat ability. So the scale goes ANBU Kakashi over Mukai, Mukai over 11-year-old Itachi and teen Shisui without including Mangekyo. You'll find out why that's the case in the video. Those two together without including MS over Fugaku, and Fugaku is at least low Kage level for being in consideration for the position of Hokage. This means that ANBU Kakashi should be at bare minimum low Kage level. If you're feeling uneasy about this scale, I implore you strongly to go watch that video after this. I promise you it's a much more in-depth breakdown and you'll feel better about it. Part 1 Kakashi is the one that I think most people consider to be fairly easy to scale, but I do want to clear some things up that I believe are kind of a really bad miscommunication. First, it's not entirely clear if Kakashi is actually below Haku. I know that may sound strange based on what you've heard in other videos, but just follow me here. When you analyze the statement he makes, the Viz gets this wrong, again, unsurprisingly. In the Viz, Kakashi implies Haku is stronger than him by saying, quote, "This probably isn't the last time we'll run into someone who's both younger than you," referencing Naruto, "and stronger than me," end quote, obviously indicating that Haku is stronger than himself. However, what it actually says is, quote, "In this world, there are kids who are younger than you and stronger than me," end quote, which excludes the idea that they're running into one of them right now. What helps my case here as well is the fact that Haku is 15, so he's not younger than Naruto here, so if the first part of the statement doesn't apply to Haku, the second may not either, and I think it's important to understand that he says this in response to Naruto being like, how did such a young kid take down such a strong opponent? And Kakashi was just framing for him, in the shinobi world, there are really young kids who are super strong, so come to expect it. So I don't think he's drawing a comparison between himself and Haku here, or at least it's impossible to actually prove that. In addition to this, Kakashi fully believes that Sasuke is strong enough to go toe-to-toe with Haku, at least for some amount of time. Considering the fact that we already know Kakashi is multiple tiers above Sasuke, even without utilizing his Sharingan, it makes 0 sense for Haku to be this high. What you could argue is that in the mirrors he'd be above Kakashi, which is fine, but it's arguable whether or not this type of attack would actually be effective against Kakashi if Sasuke was able to avoid critical attacks from the needles, and his Sharingan is far less developed than Kakashi's, and his physicals are far lower. So Kakashi should be above Haku, but where does that get us? Someone else that Part 1 Kakashi is directly compared to is Kabuto, but that's not really good either because he can be relative to Kabuto in base without the Sharingan or Raikiri active, and then cliff him with both of those active. This actually makes a lot of sense whenever you consider the fact that we see them move relative to one another, and Kabuto has to deploy tricky tactics to get away from Kakashi. He can't just outspeed him, and this is really important because, again, Kakashi's not using the Sharingan precog, and neither is he using his Raikiri, which amps his speed. So if Kabuto is unable to outspeed him in base without the Sharingan, then he should just be getting blitzed by him with the Sharingan and Raikiri active. Also, neither Orochimaru nor Jiraiya have verifiably seen the Raikiri in action at this point, so they may just be comparing Kabuto to base Kakashi here as well. And before someone says it, yes, Kakashi unveils his Raikiri against Orochimaru, but he doesn't even raise his headband to use the Sharingan and never actually uses it against him, so that's not really a counter. So then what do we have? Kakashi is vaguely below the Sannin, but vaguely above Kabuto, Haku, and Zabuza, as well as the rest of the Konoha Jonin. Since Kakashi is out of shape and seemingly hasn't been going on missions for a while, it makes sense for him to have dropped from his ANBU ranking of low Kage-ish back down to that peak Jonin tier. So if you were to say he's peak Jonin, bordering on low Kage, I think that's fine. Keep in mind that Kakashi is just stated to be above Guy, and Guy is stated to have kicked away his inferiors when he fought Kisame, so that makes a case for part Part 1 Kakashi over Part 1 Kisame to be a legitimate one as well. But Part 1 Kakashi, like I said before, is fairly easy to scale, so let's get into some trickier ones with early Shippuden. But before we dive into that, if you are enjoying the video so far or maybe learned something, feel free to like and subscribe. You know, unless you just hate consistent Naruto content with sick crossverse videos, if you don't want that type of content, I mean, what are you even doing here? I mean, this is a video on how Kakashi's underrated. You chose to be here, so like, well, anyway. So Shippuden is where a lot of people have a lot of misconceptions, and early Shippuden is no exception to that. Quickly, by early Shippuden, what I mean is pre-Pain arc, so basically everything up until that point. This version of Kakashi has been training and going on missions. As you can see, his completed missions have increased from Part 1, so he should be a bit stronger than his end of Part 1 self, but you could argue that the difference is marginal. So where exactly does he scale? For starters, he should be above KN0 Naruto, as Deidara just considers him a greater threat than that version of Naruto, but you could even say he's above Two Tails Naruto from that same encounter, as a fatigued Kakashi is able to basically blitz Naruto in this state in order to place the QB suppression tag on him, but I think we can do better than that. During the Akatsuki suppression arc, there's an interesting interaction between Kakashi and Naruto that I think implies Kakashi is far more impressive than most people would think. I should preface this by saying Kakashi should know about how strong Sasuke is, as Yamato told him everything about the interaction they had at Orochimaru's hideout. Also, he knows about the curse mark, so any sort of amplifier that would be going into that, he should also be taking into consideration when he makes any statements about Sasuke's strength. So Yamato tells him about what happened, and then Kakashi goes on to make two really interesting claims. First, Naruto says Sasuke has gotten too strong, and Kakashi responds with, "You'll just need to get even stronger than that." He then goes on to tell him that he's developed a training method to accelerate Naruto's growth, implying that this training method could make him stronger than Sasuke. Second, he says that if the training method pans out, he might even surpass Kakashi. What this means is that Kakashi believes that this training will allow Naruto to surpass Sasuke, but might allow Naruto to surpass himself, placing Kakashi at least on the same level as Sasuke based on his own intuition and the report that Yamato gave. Keep in mind, Kakashi does have Kamui at this point in time, so he could just think that even if Sasuke is a bit stronger than him overall, that he'd be able to defeat him with that if worse came to worse. This is actually sort of backed up by the fact that Kakashi believes Naruto with the Rasen Shuriken has surpassed him, but without it, he hasn't. This would imply that it's more about jutsu mastery than anything else, as Kakashi wasn't able to apply a nature release to the Rasengan. You could also argue it's just about large-scale ninjutsu, so Sasuke's Kirin would, in the same way, surpass Kakashi, but he could still be over him as an overall combatant. Now, I know that is probably something that a lot of people are going to disagree with, and I know there are other arguments against that. I just think, honestly, based on Kakashi's statements, that it lends credence to the idea that he should at least be on that level. Also, I trust the guy who's arguably the smartest character in the series to be able to gauge how strong somebody is based off a report. I also trust Yamato's assessment of Sasuke based on the fact that he is just stated to be top of the ANBU, and the ANBU are specifically chosen so that they can go in and infiltrate, gather information, and assassinate people. So I just think it's trustworthy, but if you don't think so, that's totally fine. But aside from that, what else do we have in regards to scaling Kakashi? Not a whole lot. He should scale to Kakuzu, since Kakuzu basically had to use underhanded tactics and target Team 10 in order to get Kakashi into a bad spot, whereas Kakashi is able to outspeed Kakuzu's lightning style ninjutsu and combat Kakuzu and Hidan fairly effectively by himself, despite entering the battlefield fatigued. Also, keep in mind that Kakashi could have just used his Kamui on Kakuzu when he was trying to take his heart out, but was trusting Shikamaru's plan, and also could have used it to defend against the fire style ninjutsu Kakuzu launched at him later on, so he was never in any real danger, but probably would have if he would have had to use it defensively against that fire technique. Outside of that, we don't really have much to go off of, so I think it's fair to place Kakashi in that mid-Akatsuki tier, being able to rival or defeat characters like Hidan, Kakuzu, Konan, Deidara, and Sasori, while being outscaled to the likes of Obito, Pain, Itachi, and even Kisame. Pain Arc Kakashi is weird. He somewhat physically scales to Pain and likely could have beaten just Diva without help, but maybe even both Diva and Ashura as he implies to Choji and Choza. However, this is a suppressed Diva and it likely would have required him to use Kamui. That being said, he does Perception Blitz Pain with Kamui when he warps away the nail, but this is a version of Pain who again was suppressed and wasn't using his heightened perception mode where the Rinnegan pupils get dilated. So again, we can only really scale Kakashi to a suppressed Pain, which is kind of a weird place to be at. That said, Pain does consider him a genuine threat and feels that he needs to eliminate him as to not have to deal with him in the future, but he ultimately would get wiped if he had to face all 6 at once. So I think it's fair to keep him in that mid-Akatsuki tier for now. It is worth noting that he's genuinely considered for the role of Hokage during this arc by both Tsunade and Shikaku, so he is verifiably Kage level at worst. We just can't really get him any higher than that. This is one of the ones I was really excited for. I don't have a ton to say, but I do think that what I will tell you will change a lot of your minds on how strong 5 Kage Summit Kakashi is. First off, Kakashi is 100% without a doubt mentally nerfed in his interaction with Sasuke. Not only does he compare his situation to Hiruzen's, saying that he knows how Hiruzen felt, and Hiruzen was clearly mentally nerfed in that interaction with Orochimaru, Databook 4 also just tells us that a darkness covers Kakashi during his battle with Sasuke, so anything he does here is below what he should actually be capable of doing. Second, what he does do is criminally underrated. Most people already know about Kakashi warping away the Susanoo arrows. Yes, arrows, there are 2 of them, but a lot of people don't know just how crazy that is. You see, Sasuke is physically relative to Danzo, as shown to us multiple times in their fight. He then goes to massively outspeed Danzo with the Susanoo arrow from a good distance away. This makes the Susanoo arrow potentially a blitz tier above Sasuke's own movement speed. That's number 1. Number 2, Kakashi and Sasuke 100% had an off-screen fight. We know this without a shadow of a doubt because the birthday column for Kakashi tells us that he and Sasuke, quote, unleashed ninjutsu at one another, end quote. We do not see that on screen. What we do see is they get ready to fight on the bridge, Sasuke charges, we then cut away to Naruto tracking them down, and then we cut back to Kakashi and Sasuke no longer on the bridge but on the water, with Sasuke brandishing not only his dual Mangekyo but also the Susanoo. Since Kakashi used Kamui defensively, that does not qualify for unleashing ninjutsu at someone, as that language obviously implies an offensive application of ninjutsu. So this means that they definitely exchanged some kind of ninjutsu in the cutaway. As to what exact ninjutsu they would have used, it's impossible to say for sure, but just based on how they typically fight, I think it's likely that Sasuke would have used a Chidori and maybe some fire style as well, while Kakashi likely would have countered with either his own fire or water style, maybe the reason they're down on the water in the first place, and potentially would have used a lightning clone or something to counter Chidori. Since Sasuke is bloodlusted and hatred amped, and they're both fatigued, while Kakashi is also verifiably mental nerfed, I think this gives us at least the ability to reasonably scale 5 Kage Summit Kakashi to low relative to 5 Kage Summit Sasuke. I will say, a lot of people bring up Sasuke's blindness as well as his fatigue, but I think that we need to contextualize that a bit. Sasuke doesn't actually show any signs of blindness until he ups his Susanoo in that final moment against Kakashi, so we probably don't have any reason to believe that he had any sort of blindness prior to that. It seems to have struck him all at once, so their fight would have been with him being able to see. Also, he is fatigued there, that's without a doubt, but he's also gotten his chakra refilled, or at least gotten a little bit of chakra back throughout the process of the 5 Kage Summit, whereas Kakashi did just travel a whole country's distance away, and while Sasuke is mentally amped, Kakashi is mentally nerfed. So I do think it is reasonable to scale these two to one another, even if their amps or nerfs are unquantifiable. And obviously Sasuke lives in that mid to high Kage tier, so I think it's fair to say that Kakashi should be at least in that mid Kage tier as well. I'm not gonna lie, I think this version of Kakashi might be the most underrated version. Just to preface this, early War Kakashi will be the version of Kakashi we get in the war leading up to his fight with Obito that begins in chapter 629. This Kakashi is not only stated to have the power of 1,000 shinobi, he also just has a ludicrous amount of great feats to go along with it. Let's just go over his physicals. This version of Kakashi is not only shown moving relative to 3rd to 5th gate guy, we don't really know what gate he's in, but without his Raikiri active, he then goes on to move relative to 6th gate guy while using his Raikiri. Kakashi also obviously goes relative to White Mask Obito physically, even outspeeding him with his Raikiri on a couple of occasions, but the most impressive thing, in my opinion, is something that nobody ever talks about: Kakashi's performance versus the level 2 Jinchuriki. You see, KCM1 Naruto performs well against the partial transformation Jinchuriki, but once they go into level 2, he gets juggled by them and needs help from B to prevent his capture. Meanwhile, just a couple of chapters later, Kakashi fights the same 4 Biju that Naruto was getting juggled by himself with 0 issues. In fact, because Kakashi was performing so well against them, Obito was forced to make them go into their full transformation states and try to wipe out Kakashi and Guy with 5 Biju bombs. What this does is simply confirm that Kakashi, in terms of physical combat, is above that KCM1 Naruto level. There is no way around that. Now, keep in mind, this is Kakashi with a perception ant from a Sharingan, as well as utilizing the Raikiri for a lot of that battle, so it definitely doesn't apply to his base physicals, but it does apply to his standard combat speed. This also wouldn't definitively put him above like KCM1 Naruto mental ant body flicker, but just his standard combat speed should be higher than KCM1 Naruto's standard combat speed. But what about his Kamui? This is where it gets truly insane. Not only does this scale above KCM1 Naruto, since he can easily snipe a Rasengan out of KCM1 Naruto's hand while he's moving at full speed, it should also scale above KCM2 Naruto. This is actually fairly simple, but most people don't realize just how insane it is. You see, later on in the battle with Obito, Kakashi warps away KCM2 Naruto's clone, which should scale the Kamui to that high with no issues. And I know some people will be like, well, it's a clone, it's not the real Naruto. Well, show me evidence that Naruto's clones move slower than he does in regular combat speed. I'll wait. That said, this is way deeper than that, okay? Not only did he warp away the full Naruto clone's body, he actually performed a Kamui feint and perception blitzed Obito at the same time. Upon analyzing this encounter, you'll see that Naruto's Rasengan begins to warp away, prompting Obito to believe that Kakashi and Naruto are using the same strategy that they did before when Naruto was in KCM1. So Obito then ejects a rod from Kamui to destroy Naruto, but Naruto is now gone. Obito believes that what happened is that a clone that Naruto had sent out was dispersed, but that is not the case. What actually happened is that Kakashi warped away the entire KCM2 clone so quickly that Obito couldn't recognize what happened. So let's go over this. Kakashi is capable of tracking KCM2 Naruto's full combat speed, using a Kamui feint on the Rasengan, and then warping away a human-sized mass right in front of Obito, so quickly that White Mask Obito, who has a Mangekyo Sharingan and a Rinnegan, can't properly ascertain what happened. This is bananas. So, unironically, early War Kakashi can run the fade hands to hands with KCM1 Naruto level combatants, while also being able to Kamui snipe KCM2 Naruto level combatants with 0 issues. That said, Kakashi's ability to harm level 2 Jinchuriki, warp away things the size of the Geto Mazo's head, having KCM1 plus physical scaling and KCM2 plus Kamui speeds, puts Kakashi in a tier of power that a lot of people tend to downplay. This is someone who should not be in conversations with people like Itachi, Pain, or the Sannin, as none of them have scaling assertions like this. The final thing I'll add here is that Kakashi is a stamina demon. On panel, prior to receiving any extra chakra, early War Kakashi uses Kamui 5 times, Raikiri and its variants 8 times, Shadow Clones twice, and the Mud Wall once. Now, that's on panel, but we actually get a statement in his Naruto website birthday column that just says that after he made that statement about, being Kakashi the copy ninja, 1,000 jutsu, blah blah blah, that he rampaged across the battlefield with the might of 1,000 shinobi. This means he probably was casting more jutsu than this. So compared to somebody like Naruto or Hashirama, this isn't insane, but this does mean that Kakashi has at least 5 shots with Kamui against any opponent he faces, which makes him incredibly dangerous for anyone KCM2 Naruto level or below. So I'll keep this one brief because late War Kakashi is basically early War Kakashi on steroids. He goes from being KCM 1 plus level physically to moving on pace with KCM Minato, a Bijou Sage Mode Naruto level combatant. You could also argue that his Kamui gets a buff depending on how impressive you think his warping of Jubidara's TSO defense could be, but yeah, that's basically all that changes for his scaling. I will add quickly that when Kakashi and Minato are fighting Black Zetsu, who was in possession of Obito's body, they're standing next to one another with a Rasengan and Raikiri active, and we can see multiple dust plumes in the back while they're huffing and puffing, with Black Zetsu calling them persistent. This obviously implies a drawn-out battle, with Kakashi and Minato going relative to one another, utilizing multiple high-skill techniques in tandem. Since Minato in base is likely a KCM2 plus level fighter in terms of combat speed, as I covered in the short that you'll see popping up in the top right, this is also great for Kakashi's scaling. Now, you may say, well, how do you know that they went relative? If they weren't going relative, Black Zetsu wouldn't say, you too are persistent. He would probably just compliment Minato or Kakashi individually if there was a really big gap. So, essentially, he goes from being KCM 1 plus combat speed to KCM 2 combat speed, and a potentially slightly more impressive Kamui. DMS Kakashi is a monster, and capital M on that. He has a genuine argument for being the strongest character in Shippuden. Allow me to explain. Not only does Kakashi now have access to a perfect Susanoo, along with his Kamui Shuriken, which are school bus-sized shuriken that warp away anything they touch into another dimension, he's also legitimately a blitz tier above Kaguya. Now, people have tried to debate this feat a ton, but it's honestly not debatable. Kakashi just straight up blitzes Kaguya with his Kamui Raikiri here, but this isn't even the full scope of it. This blitz takes place right after Kaguya absorbs the chakra from the Infinite Tsukiyomi, at which point Black Zetsu says that she's gotten exponentially faster and stronger. One level of exponential increase would be 10 times, so before this, she was going relative to 6-Pass Sage Mode Naruto and Rinnegan Sasuke, and now she's at least 10 times faster. This puts DMS Kakashi at a blitz tier above someone who's at least 10 times faster than those two. But it's not just the Kamui Raikiri that's fast. Kakashi's standard Kamui also just massively outspeeds Naruto and Sasuke. When Kaguya and Zetsu use the all-killing Ash Bone to try and stop Naruto and Sasuke from sealing Kaguya, Kakashi is able to warp away a football-sized portal in the same amount of time it takes 6-Pass Sage Mode Naruto, who should be moving at full speed, to cover like 2 inches. This means, unironically, even if someone is as fast as 6-Pass Sage Mode Naruto, they can get their Dome Kamui sniped faster than they can react. Honestly, if Kaguya was able to be killed via decapitation, I don't think anyone could reasonably argue Kaguya over DMS Kakashi. This must be why Naruto's website birthday column outright states that DMS Kakashi overwhelmed Kaguya. Something to think about. So I'll actually be scaling Hokage Kakashi and Boruto era Kakashi together, since Kakashi was Hokage for like 12 years, and how strong he is in the Boruto era is reasonably about how strong he'd be at the end of his Hokage tenure. I've actually done a video detailing Hokage Kakashi versus Tsunade, but it is one of my super old ones, so if you'd like to go back and check that out, feel free. Just, you know, give me a break on the quality. But here are the cliff notes. Hokage / Boruto era Kakashi, who I'll just refer to as Hokage Kakashi from now on, in terms of speed, is a blitz tier above Kaio, who's a blitz tier above the Raikage. Even if A wasn't going all out in their battle, he was going seriously enough to use a Lariat, and she straight up perception blitzes him. So I think that this is a fair statement to make. But the Boruto anime makes it even crazier. In the Boruto anime, Kakashi goes relative to Kashin Koji, who considers Kakashi to be a genuine threat. This Koji is relative to a 10% Jigen, who's at bare minimum relative to base adult Naruto, putting Kakashi's combat speed in that Otsutsuki / Kara tier right along with base Naruto. Kakashi's attack potency is also nothing to scoff at, as he just scales above Nue, being able to damage him badly, and Nue scales above Choji and is comparable to a tailed beast. Now, this is a stronger version of Choji than the one that went toe-to-toe with the Geto Mazo temporarily during the Fourth War, so the scaling implications here with Kakashi being able to do this kind of damage are actually quite impressive. But that's not all. The cover of the Retsuden novel actually calls Kakashi the strongest teacher. Okay, Kakashi Retsuden canonically takes place after Sasuke Shinden, Teacher Star Pupil, which details Sasuke teaching Team 7. So, if you take this statement at face value, this would put Hokage Kakashi over adult Rinnegan Sasuke. This would be considered a higher interpretation, but there actually aren't any real contradictions to this. I guess you could say that Naruto being called the strongest shinobi in the world could contradict that. However, Kakashi can just be stronger than the last Naruto, but weaker than Boruto-era Naruto as he's no longer a teacher. Alternatively, you can also say that this can still apply to Naruto because he's dying of a chakra illness at this point in time, which would mean that Naruto, once recovered, can still maintain this title as strongest, while allowing that statement to still be true. There are other feats that we could go over, like him erecting a village-sized mud wall, being able to counter a 6-paths enhanced water-style attack that's stated to be able to flood an entire country, and a bunch of other things that he does in these novels. I implore you to go read them because they're actually really good, particularly Kakashi Retsuden and Hiden. But that being said, it doesn't really move the needle, so at bare minimum, we have Kakashi at base Hokage Naruto levels in terms of speed, with bare minimum multi-continental AP, with his highest assertions putting him as an overall combatant over even the likes of Rinnegan Sasuke. So he is busted, and just people then ask me to make a Hokage Kakashi versus Hashirama video, and I just want to tell you guys, he would blitz him and one-tap him. It's not even funny. So I think it should be fairly clear that an Otsutsuki level combatant like Kakashi is just way outmatching Hashirama. But that said, if you made it this far, I just want to say thank you so much, and until next time, have an awesome day.